Good morning. Today is July 18th. It is Nelson Mandela Day. Nelson Mandela, if he were still alive, would be 107 years old. He was born in 1918. And for those of you who may not know the history, he was a Black South African leader and activist who became the first president of a finally unified South Africa after serving 27 years in prison. And the Nelson Mandela Foundation decided to honor his memory by dedicating Nelson Mandela Day today, that every person of goodwill take an hour of this day to do something for someone other than yourself, to do something for someone less fortunate than yourself. And this was brought to my attention by Naledi Pandor, the former Minister of Cooperation, the former foreign minister of South Africa, who spoke at the Schiller Institute conference in Berlin, where many watchers will be happy to hear Harley Schlanger, who is recuperating from a scheduled surgery, also spoke, and he will be back with you on Monday. Now, this is very important because South Africa is a very good example of the power of the United Nations. And as I think Dave Christie told you yesterday, the United Nations will finally be holding the meeting hosted by France and Saudi Arabia on a two-state solution, Israel-Palestine. Apparently, Macron is now not saying he's going to attend. He had said that France would recognize and announce its recognition of a Palestinian state at this event, which is July 28th and 29th. I don't know where that stands, but I just want to underscore that the UN General Assembly, despite the veto powers of the US and UK in the Security Council, does have the power to put an enormous amount of pressure on the state of Israel, which is violating all international law, committing genocide and other atrocities. In 1974, the United Nations General Assembly actually refused to seat the South African delegation in the General Assembly because they were all white. They still had an apartheid regime where Black South Africans did not have the same rights as the white South Africans. And later, the UN General Assembly passed an arms embargo where they mandated that any member state in the UN could not send weapons to South Africa. Imagine if the UN General Assembly would apply that kind of pressure to Israel. It needs to be done. Israel should be suspended from participating in the United Nations until it declares a ceasefire and opens up massive humanitarian aid, not through the fraudulent Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, but restoring the UNRWA, the United Nations Works Relief Agency, which actually was doing an effective aid job delivering aid without killing people. Now, otherwise, we have a very dangerously escalating situation with Russia. As people know, on Monday of this week, President Trump announced that the US is going to be sending Patriot missile systems to Ukraine. What we're doing is NATO is paying us to buy them, and the Germans, which have a bunch of them, are shipping them into Ukraine, so they're getting them quickly. This really bodes very ill, and I was reflecting what has happened to President Trump, because I hope everyone watching can remember that meeting a few months ago when Zelensky came to the White House, and he'd clearly been pumped up by King Charles and the warmongering Senator Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal, and he was wearing his sweatsuit even though he'd been told to wear a suit. And then Trump just said, you don't have any cards, you're losing the war, you should negotiate. J.D. Vance correctly said, you don't have any troops. I've seen the videos. They're kidnapping people and shoving them into cars and sending them off to the front lines, totally untrained, unprepared. You've suffered massive casualties. It's time to talk. Now, all of a sudden, the pro-British Empire Zionist rag, the New York Post, is interviewing Zelensky as if he's some kind of honest authority and not a cocaine snorting, mediocre comedian sellout. And he's saying that Putin is the one who is lying, when anyone following this knows that the issue has been the expansion of NATO. Now we have an insane American military leader, a NATO military leader, talking about how we're going to take Kaliningrad. This is just extremely dangerous. I think that President Putin, Peskov, the spokesman for the Kremlin, are still being diplomatic in hopes that this will be resolved. But Dmitry Trenin, who also addressed the Schiller Institute conference, was much harsher. And you have to remember that Tucker Carlson reported that when Biden was sending the long-range missiles to Ukraine to strike deep inside of Russia, Carlson reported that people at the Pentagon felt that this would lead to a 50% possibility that a nuclear war would start, and they thought that was okay. And think about Rear Admiral Buchanan, who said at the CSIS conference that if we had a nuclear war, we'd want to make sure to have enough weapons left over to still be hegemonic, as if the whole world wouldn't be over. So you have some very insane people making policy, and I don't know why this shift has occurred. I don't know if it has to do with the Epstein files or some other kind of pressure, if it's no pressure, if Trump was just leading us on, if there's something going on now. I don't know, but I think we can't afford to take anything for granted, because things are not improving. They keep getting actually worse. Now, I would like to invite everyone, therefore, first of all, since it is Nelson Mandela Day today, the 11 a.m. International Peace Coalition with Helga Zepp-LaRouche and other notable speakers at the Schiller Institute. And then this evening at 7 p.m. on the LaRouche Organization symposium, my guest will be Scott Ritter. So we'll be hearing a lot there. And if you are anywhere near the New York metropolitan area, or you want to come in, the LaRouche Organization and the Schiller Institute will be planning 2 major days of action around the UN conference, July 28th and 29th, and everyone is welcome to join us there. So thank you for listening. Be sure to do your hour of good work today. It can be picketing your congressman's office, but make sure to take a video and send it in. And we'll talk to you soon. And Harley, will see you on Monday.